catch me howling at the moon.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. A couple months ago, I made a video talking about why the Morgan Hypercoasters are some of the most underwhelming roller coasters out there, and all of you completely agreed with me.
Could you be any more whiny? Why these coasters aren't good enough for my spoiled enthusiast brain? Let me go complain about it. Goddamn dude, if you were an enthusiast during the 80s you would hate every single coaster you'd ride.
Oh my god!
And I had a lot of fun making that video, so today I'm here to talk about one of my all-time least favorite coasters, Skyrush, aka Thigh Crush at Hersheypark. Now, I'm far from the first person to make a hate video on Skyrush, and I'm sure I won't be the last either. And it's pretty common knowledge that this is one of the most polarizing coasters in the community. I know people that don't like it, and I also know a few people who have this as their number one overall coaster. But I hate it. Like, I really do not like this ride. Now, everyone knows the blatantly obvious reason as to why Skyrush is a flawed roller coaster, and even the stands of this coaster seem to agree with this. Skyrush probably has the worst restraints of any roller coaster ever built. There's the video, that's why Skyrush sucks. But seriously, in today's video, I'm going to dive a little deeper into why I think Skyrush is one of the most disappointing coasters ever built. But first, if you guys are new to the channel or our videos have been popping up on your homepage recently, do yourself a favor and drop us a sub down below. So without further ado, let's dive into why Skyrush sucks. In the early 2010s, Hersheypark was one of the biggest major amusement parks in the United States without a hypercoaster. In the 2000s, the park had gotten 2 solid base hits partnering with coaster manufacturer Intamin, adding Stormrunner in 2004 and Fahrenheit in 2008. But with the park's obvious lack of a 200-foot coaster in their lineup, it became pretty apparent in the community that the park's next coaster was going to be a home run swing. So when word got out that Hersheypark was going back to Intamin, this time for a prototype winged hypercoaster, you can imagine that expectations among coaster enthusiasts became sky high. On August 2nd, 2011, Hersheypark announced they would be adding Skyrush for 2012, the park's 12th roller coaster. Skyrush would open to the public on May 26, 2012 as the tallest, fastest, and longest coaster at Hershey. Now, this is usually the part of the video where I would go over the ride's layout, but after the first drop, Skyrush is pretty much just an onslaught of overbanked turns, airtime hills, and sometimes overbanked turns that twist into airtime hills.
You just drop in and just smack the lip, whoop, drop down, snap, ah!
If you're a fan of roller coasters, you basically get the gist of what Skyrush does. So to avoid being repetitive, let's just talk about the overall nature of Skyrush's ride experience. Skyrush was intentionally designed to give intense positive through its tight turns and equally aggressive negative Gs through its airtime hills, which in theory is basically everything you could ask for in a roller coaster. Hell, you pull 5 Gs at the bottom of the first drop, which is such a strong force, it's virtually impossible for most people to keep their hands up during it. Skyrush checks out on all the stats too. It has a 200-foot drop that takes you at an 85-degree angle, it has a top speed of 75 miles per hour, and at 3,600 feet long, the ride is decently length for a hyper with a twisting style layout. All of these things on a typical roller coaster would probably lead to it being a pretty good ride. But unfortunately, Skyrush is not just any other roller coaster. It's a failed prototype with trains and restraints that are not well suited to the ride's aggressive nature. My first experience with Skyrush was in 2012, the ride's opening year, when I was 15 years old and probably weighed about 125 pounds. I got 2 rides on Skyrush that visit, and they were probably the 2 most painful experiences of my young life up to that point. My toothpick legs got absolutely flattened by the ride's abysmal restraints. Fast forward to last summer when I made my return visit to Hersheypark, 8 years and about 60 pounds heavier. I went into this visit with a clean slate mentality, fully expecting Skyrush to redeem itself from that traumatic experience, especially considering I know multiple people who consider Skyrush to be their top overall coaster. I rode Skyrush 4 times in every seating combination. Back wing seat, back middle seat, front wing, front center, and I just hated it. And it didn't take very long for me to come to the conclusion that this ride is just irredeemable. No matter how I sat, how I braced myself, how I was sitting, the restraints still give your thighs an incredible amount of discomfort, especially during the ride's violent airtime moments. The problem with the Skyrush restraints is this. Even if prior to the ride you position the restraint in a comfortable position, or are even able to give yourself some extra room, the ride's positive forces are so intense that it is literally impossible to keep the restraint from coming down into your legs as far as it can possibly go. Even if you try to hold the restraint up into place, by the bottom of the first drop it's going to be digging into your legs. Trust me, I tried a couple times. I'm convinced that anyone who says that they don't find Skyrush to be uncomfortable is either a liar or just genuinely enjoys the pain. Now I know that there's a Skyrush method and other ways that people have claimed to make the restraints somewhat tolerable.
Oh my god!
But think about it. If you need to sit a certain way to make a roller coaster even bearable to ride in the first place, how can you possibly classify that as a good ride? Isn't half the point of riding roller coasters in the first place being able to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride? Not bracing yourself in an awkward position so your legs don't get chopped in half? I think the biggest indictment of Skyrush, though, is the fact that just 6 years after it opened, Hersheypark announced that they were building another hypercoaster. Most theme parks don't get 2 coasters period in 6 years. And Hershey built 2 hypers in that same time frame because they knew they messed up the first one so bad.
Everybody is going to get to know each other in the pot. I'm serious about this stuff.
And just to add insult to injury, they ended up building Canobie, which is a much better and more widely loved hyper, legitimately just a couple hundred feet from Skyrush.
This guy TKOs people. When I knock people out, they don't f***ing move. Who the f*** is that guy?
I mean, even the general public hates this coaster, and that's saying a lot. In general, the GP never really likes overly intense coasters, but the fact that Skyrush is intense and painful just makes it a double whammy for them. There's typically never really a line for Skyrush, even when the park is completely slammed. Also, why did Hershey paint a ride that's themed to the sky piss yellow? I mean, the ride has a really pretty setting, but that ugly yellow track is not pleasant on the eyes at all. So as we typically do on this channel, let's go ahead and throw Skyrush into a tier list. And by the way this video has gone so far, you can probably guess where I'm going with this. Skyrush is not the worst or most painful roller coaster I've ever been on, thanks to you. But unfortunately, the restraints just make it impossible for me to enjoy this ride. And any coaster that is simply unbearable to ride has to go into the crap tier. I just don't want to be in pain while riding a roller coaster. Is that too unreasonable to ask? The next time I go back to Hershey, I probably will end up giving Skyrush a third chance. But there's a 99.99% chance in my mind that my opinion will remain exactly the same. This is not a world-class coaster, this is not an elite coaster, this is a pain machine. And until Intamin can come up with new trains or restraints to fix it, it will remain in my lowest tier of coasters. Ooh, I think that sufficiently covers my distaste for this ride. Do me a favor and let me know what you guys think about Skyrush in the comments down below. I'm sure there's some of you that also hate the ride just as much as me, and I'm also sure that some of you Skyrush stans have already left a nasty comment about how I'm a baby for not being able to tolerate the restraints, but I'm genuinely curious to see which way the overall sentiment leans for this ride, so leave me a comment down below. Regardless what you think of Skyrush, if you've made it to this point in the video, please be sure to show some love by dropping a like and subscribing to the channel. Also, just as a disclaimer, this video is a reflection of my opinion and completely just for jokes. Even though I personally don't care for Skyrush, I still think Hersheypark is one of the best and most well-ran parks in the country, so there's zero ill will intended to them by this video. As always, thank you guys for checking out the video, and we'll see you all next time.